The following presentation was recorded live for the International Association of Square Dance Callers 19th Annual Convention. We take you live to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where our session is just getting underway.
Please, if you would get your seat so we could start on time. The name of this panel is Life After Work and Humor Can Enhance Our Lives. Steve Greiner is Assistant Dean at Darden College of Education at Old Dominion University. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Education from the University of Kentucky, a Master of Public Service from Western Kentucky University, and a Doctorate in Education from Virginia Tech. Dr. Greiner has published several articles and conducted numerous workshops nationwide on humor. I'd like to present Dr. Steve Greiner.
Thank you. Evidently, none of you have been my former students because they would never applaud when I walk into a room. As you might expect, being a former professor, I taught for 18 years, these little yellow sheets of paper that are going around, and there are pencils available. If you do not have a pencil, please raise your hand. Or if you need some paper, we're going to take a test. Typical professor. Do you need paper? Okay. Okay, very simply, this test, I need to find out if this group and I have anything in common. I spoke to a group of deans this morning, had breakfast with a group of deans and told them where I was going, and they just said, there's absolutely nothing that you have in common with this group. And I said, well, we'll just wait and see. So on the way down, I developed a test to see if, in fact, we have anything in common. And to show that I developed it on the way down, I didn't even bring the paper. We had to go underneath the table and find paper. So we're making this up as we're going along. What I would like for you to do is I'm going to give you a 60-second time test. You have 60 seconds, and only 60 seconds to complete this task. So you'll need your paper, and I don't care if you hold it this way or this way. You'll just need a piece of paper and pen or pencil. What I'm going to get you to do is start with the number 100 and write backwards, numerically of course, write backwards to 0. You have 60 seconds to go from 100 to 0. And for those of you who have already started, I haven't given the word go. Those of you who are doing it by 5s or 10s, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. Do it by one number at a time, from 100 to 0. We're going to see if anyone can actually make it in 60 seconds. Okay? Oh, I forgot one thing. During this 60-second test, I'm going to stop you somewhere along the way and ask 3 questions. You are to stop wherever you are, write down the answer to that question, and then continue. So if you're at number 79, and I'll say question number 1, you'll write down the answer and then go 78, 77, 76, 75, and so on. And then I will eventually get to questions number 2 and number 3 during that 1 minute. So this task is you have 60 seconds to go from 100 to 0 and answer 3 questions along the way. Everybody ready? Set, go. First question, name a color. A color. Second question, name a flower. A flower. Third question, name a piece of furniture. A piece of furniture. And you have 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, time. Okay, where did we get? 54, 42. We got someone into the 30s. 35 and 36. Notice that they're together. They started early. No? Okay. That's great. Oh, okay. You took the abbreviated approach on the answers. Okay. Well, that in fact I didn't need to know your answers. That's part of the test here to find out if. Take a look at your 3 answers, and please, by a show of hands, let me know if the answer to your first question was red or blue. Please raise your hand. Take a look around, folks. If the answer to the second question was rose, please raise your hand. And if the answer to the third question was a chair or a sofa, please raise. This group and I have no problem. We can communicate. We think alike. Oh, what happens if they were different? Oh, well, we don't say anything about that. What, did you have daffodil and yellow and... You had what? Violet and table? We'll have to analyze that later to see what... With my counseling and psychology background, we'll come up with a good solution to that one. The other thing that also might show you that we have something in common, several years ago there was a book written. It was a dance textbook titled Folk Games. And I don't know how many of you have ever read it or bought that book, Folk Games. We have one person in the room that has seen Folk Games. Do you remember the author of that book? Okay. Well, you're looking at him. So yes, I do have something in common with the group. I have a dance textbook. It's been on the market for a long time. Obviously, it's not doing well. Actually, it's out of print. So I do have a fondness for this group, and I think I have a sense of belonging here, plus the fact that I'm also from the state of West Virginia, so that's... Karen doesn't get any speakers unless they are from the state of West Virginia, I found out. The other thing that I was asked also this morning, and a student asked me this, said, aren't you nervous about speaking in front of a group that you have no idea who's involved in the group, who they are, and how many people they are, and aren't you really nervous about that? And I indicated, not really. And I thought about that, and I realized that there is nothing, and absolutely nothing, that this group could do to embarrass me any more than what happened my very first day teaching in higher education. I had been working in city government for about 5 years, and I was a director, a department head, and mired in the bureaucracy, filling out forms in triplicate, answering phones from complaining citizens up until midnight or 3 in the morning. At 3 in the morning, I would get calls from the police department. This is true. Get a call from the police department wanting to know what the piano was doing in the swimming pool. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I have no idea what the piano was doing in the pool, but I figured that there's got to be a better life somewhere else. I had an opportunity at that point. This was in the early 1970s. I was offered a teaching position, and I felt, well, gee, I always wanted to teach. I had an extended education, and I think this would be an excellent opportunity. I took the position. The position was at a all-women's college, and this was my very first teaching experience. Well, I was hired to do a certain set of courses based on my management and budget and finance background. But when I got there, the college lost their swimming instructor, and in a desperate move asked me if I could teach swimming. And fortunately, I had been certified to teach swimming. So I said, sure, I can teach swimming. I then became the very first male swim instructor at this college, in the history of the college. There were a few policies that the college had. One was that all the participants in the swim class had to wear college-issued swimsuits. I said, fine, except for me, of course. I had 24 people in the class, and there were 24 women. And so I indicated, please go to the equipment room, check out the swimsuit, go to the locker room, and then report to the pool. I had not seen the swimsuits prior to the start of class. Well, as they came out of the locker room, I had realized that the college had not changed swimsuits since about 1940. Very unflattering looking, very faded green. I assume they were green when they were new. But they were the typical 1940 style swimsuits. I figured, well, I can live with that. We're just going to do swimming. Any one of you who have ever taught swimming, you already know that half of your class is terrified of the water to begin with. So I figure that my very first lecture and very first discussion or very first command or order in a class was, okay, everyone is going to get in the pool. One way to get over your fear of water is let's get in the water and try and get comfortable. So we got into the shallow end, and I got everyone to get in at least up to your chin, and for those of you who were willing to go ahead and get completely wet. So everyone got in shallow water, ducked down in, and got wet at least up to their shoulders or up to their neck, and then stood up ready for my next instruction. One thing the college forgot to tell me was that these 1940-style swimsuits, besides being that style, they were also not lined. Consequently, when they became wet, they also became very transparent. My very first day of teaching in higher education, I am 10 minutes into the class, and I'm looking at 24 naked women. Nothing this group can do could ever embarrass me any more than my very first college teaching class. Has anyone ever taught swimming before in this group? We have a few swim instructors. Have you ever tried to teach swimming to 24 people with their arms crossed? Doesn't work. Right after class, I knew that I had been looking for a calling in life, and right after class, I marched straight into the president's office and explained to him the situation about the class. And before I explained to him the situation about the class, I said to him right off, I said, Mr. President, I would like to volunteer to teach this class for life, and you never have to pay me. No, truthfully, we did change policy, but as I said, there's nothing that can embarrass me anymore, and since that time, I have never been embarrassed in front of a group ever again. So, regardless of what you've done, or will do, or attempt to do. I do these sessions quite frequently, and several of you had thought that these pieces of paper were going to be so you can write down jokes. You can groan now because I do the entire session without telling a joke. I'm the world's worst I know. I'm the world's worst. I can't remember a joke. So we'll talk a little bit about the life after work and how humor can influence or be a positive effect on your life. Now we get to the boring stuff. In thinking about work and work as our mainstay or work as our substance of our life functions, I'm reminded of a book by Studs Terkel called Working. I don't know if any of you have read Terkel's work. The book was titled Working. After reading, it's 763 pages in case you wanted to read this. It is also 763 pages of depression. Every single person that he interviewed in the book hated their work. I don't know why he put the book out. I was totally depressed after reading it and reading that Americans dislike their work. And that started me thinking about there's got to be something better to do than hate your work. Recently read some U.S. Bureau of Labor statistics. We had been in a period of the work week decline through the 60s and 70s. We got into the 80s, and there was a sudden halt to that. All those predictions that you heard about in the 1980s, that we were going to go to a 35-hour work week, forget it. the work week has now started to actually increase. It is no longer going down. We're going back up again. Combine that with the marvelous invention of advanced technology called the computer, which was all of your bosses and all of those of you who are bosses out here have said, we'll go ahead and computerize the office, and that will make work a whole lot easier. They forgot to tell you that, yes, it makes a task a little bit easier. However, you get that task done so quickly, they give you 5 more tasks. So not only did the computer make work or decrease the amount of work or decrease the amount of time involved in the tasks, it did one other thing that we as a worker society didn't anticipate. It increased our capacities at work. So now, rather than doing less, those of you who have computers, you're actually doing a lot more than you've ever done before. So my advice to you is, if a boss or a supervisor says, we are going to get you this brand new computer, just say, refuse, because you'll do it longhand or you'll do it the old way. And it will save you a whole lot more headaches and a lot of frustration. One of the things that I deal with, and I've worked with a number of companies around the United States. These are companies such as some Fortune 500 companies and some small businesses. Some things that have been happening lately in our society. We have a budget crunch. We have somewhat of a depression. We have administration. We have entry-level staff. We have supervisory-level staff that have increased their workload because there's no money to hire additional workers. In fact, you're even laying off people, which means those that are still left have assumed some of those duties. So what's happened lately is the morale in the workforce has been unbelievably low. You won't believe the number of actual workshops. I don't really consider this a workshop. The number of workshops that I'm doing between January and May of this year. I'm doing 10 workshops for businesses. All the workshops are how to improve morale in the workplace. So, and all of these, fortunately, they're between Richmond, Virginia, and Virginia Beach. I've done several in Atlanta and Minneapolis and several other places, but fortunately these 10 are close. But that's also kind of depressing itself. Here are 10 companies that have a morale problem. So I've worked with some of these companies on how to improve morale, and what I found out is that work and work-related activities actually increase one's tension, stress levels, relationships, etc. And I'm working with the companies on how to improve on that or decrease that. And I do that through humor and try to introduce humor into the workplace. One of the companies I work with, and I won't mention the name because they're still doing some of these things, and some of you may even work for this company. It is a Fortune 500 company. They were having some problems having productive board meetings. Now we're talking about the $300,000 CEO having a problem with the board and not being able to have productive meetings. So I gave him a few ideas, and one of the things that I had mentioned was try to have your next meeting have a theme, develop a theme for this meeting, and the theme should be something rather unique, interesting, and totally opposite of what you stand for and what you are. And I gave him a couple of ideas, and he chose one of them. He chose the ideas. The next board meeting, he instructed all of the board members were to show up dressed as a stereotypical tourist. Now, here are $100,000 to $300,000 three-piece suit business people having to go to the next board meeting wearing Bermuda shorts, a T-shirt, a straw hat, a camera around the neck, sandals, or whatever. They couldn't get there and run to the restroom and change. They had to come in by way of taxi. They got out of the taxi, went into the lobby of the corporate headquarters, up the elevator to the top floor, through all of the entire staff, the secretaries and middle management people, in their Bermuda shorts or whatever that they chose to wear that day, and then into the boardroom. After they got to the boardroom, they were just having a heck of a time because they had been heckled all the way up. And then once they got into the boardroom, they were laughing at each other's knees or other situations. And I got a call after the board meeting. The CEO said to me, he said, "You're not going to believe this, but this was our most productive board meeting that we've had in years." Well, it's nothing that I didn't already know was going to happen. And the reason is he injected humor into the board meeting to the extent that it relaxed everybody. It got rid of those barriers, those walls. Nobody was outdoing one another in terms of a fake facade. They were so relaxed. They gave good reports. The brainstorming session was excellent because people were all of a sudden becoming creative. They weren't afraid. I guess when you're sitting around a table in a pair of Bermuda shorts, you're not afraid to come up with ideas. That something about a three-piece suit and the tie, I guess, really restricts your brain power. So they got rid of the facade and had a productive meeting. When I do my training sessions, some of the things that I tell the groups is that when you're using humor in the workplace or even after work, it must be three things. And these three things are extremely important during work and after work. The first thing is that your use of humor in your everyday life, in your work life, or whatever life, is it must be positive. Humor has to be positive. And what I'm talking about in terms of positive humor is the kind of humor that is upbeat, enlightening, never ever demeaning. Whenever you start down the path of telling jokes or picking on someone because of their age, because of their gender, because of their race, because of their background, their heritage, etc., that's negative humor. Now, for you, it might be positive. You're just getting a real big kick out of picking on somebody because of their age or their weight or their height or their sex. But if you're the recipient, it's not very positive. So your humor must be positive. There is a whole trend of humor now that is actually pretty nasty and pretty negative. And that I don't consider positive humor as well, the off-color type of humor. I mentioned this to, I spoke to a group of senior adults. In fact, I did a 1-week workshop for a group of people. You had to be 60 years old to qualify to get in the workshop. It was a humor and humor writing workshop. And so I had this group of 60-year-olds in this workshop, and I mentioned this to this group, and one gentleman who was sitting right about where you are raised his hand, and he said, "I just ruined his life because I took away all of his humor." All of his humor was nasty, negative, off-color, demeaning, etc. Well, I was hoping that he was really joking with me and that it wasn't serious, but if he was serious, I needed to change that. So humor needs to be positive. The next thing it needs to be is spontaneous. Have you ever been in a situation, of course you have, why am I asking you this, in a situation where someone made a comment and you wish you would have said something? And then 5 minutes later you thought of something that you could have said or should have said and wished that you would have said it? You're at work and a supervisor says some really ridiculous comment and you are just aching to say it. Say it. That is spontaneous humor. To give you an example of this happened to me my first year at Old Dominion University. This was 1980 when I came to Old Dominion, and I had an office at the end of a hallway. So like the back of the room would be the end of the hallway, and there was a whole row of offices down the aisle, down the hallway, and mine was right at the very end. I was sitting in my office one day, and one of my students came in. She was a model, a gymnast, and also a former commentator for the ESPN Sports Network, a gymnastics commentator. So she had just finished a gymnastics workout. All she had on was a pair of leotards. That's it, just a pair of leotards, and was carrying her sweat clothes over her back. She walked down the hall, came into my office, sat down. We chatted for about a half hour, and then she got up and left. When she got all the way to the end of the hall, she realized that she had forgotten something, so rather than come back to my office, she stood at the end of the hall and shouted, "Dr. Greiner, I left my pants in your office." What a way for me to start my first year at Old Dominion. Well, wouldn't you know it that everybody was in that day? The only time in 12 years that I've ever seen that happen, that every faculty member is in at the same time, well, all the heads popped out. There was no way in the world I was going to get out of this. There is nothing one can say to rectify the situation. So being spontaneous, I decided, well, I've got to go with it. So what I did was I just simply leaned up against the wall in my doorway, leaned up against the door, put my arms, crossed my arms, and had one of those great big smiles on my face. And you know, to this day, they still have no idea what went on in that office, because I never did tell them. But they were also afraid to ask because of that smile. So you've got to be spontaneous. I had mentioned this same incident to this group of senior citizens that I was working with, and I'd mentioned it, I think it was like on a Tuesday, the second day of the workshop, I'd mentioned this. On Wednesday, I had come into my lecture. The lecture was started at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I walked up, and I had a podium. There was a big, giant podium. So I went to my podium, and the class was already there. They were seated, and they knew that something was up because there was a practical joke getting ready to be played. I was the victim. I had no idea. I walked and got ready to put my notes down on the podium, and there was a pair of women's underwear on the podium. Well, obviously it was a relationship to the story that I told yesterday. Again, knowing that I've got to be spontaneous. Doggone it, if I'm doing this workshop, I've got to be true to my word. So I just simply picked up the panties and held them up and kind of looked at them, and then I said, and didn't look anywhere, I just said, "Oh, I recognize these," and set them back down. Nobody in that group admitted who'd played the practical joke on me. Humor has got to be spontaneous. Are any Phil Donahue fans in here? Anyone? Well, you don't have to admit it, but if you've ever watched Phil, not many people have admitted it. I see only 3. If you've ever watched Phil Donahue, I don't know if you ever saw the show where, well, you know what Phil Donahue does. He'll take the microphone and he'll go into the audience and stick that microphone right in your face and ask you to make some comments. Well, one day there was a young lady who raised her hand, and he ran up into the audience and went to ask her a question, and she was holding a baby, an infant. And when Donahue got to this young lady, she had a scarf over the child's face, and she was holding it and had the scarf over the child's face. Well, instead of asking the question, Donahue, on national television, removed the scarf, and this young lady was nursing her baby. So here on national television, he just exposed this young lady, and Donahue did not say a thing. He missed his opportunity for the Comedy Hall of Fame right then and there. If he would have said something, anything. Now, this group would have never have missed that opportunity. I can tell some of you are already thinking, what would you have said in that situation? Yeah, there are a lot of things. Hopefully we won't repeat many of them, but think about what you would have said. That's what I'm talking about in terms of being spontaneous. Donahue missed an excellent opportunity to be spontaneous. And almost anything he could have said would have probably been funny. Almost anything. He said nothing. So, the third thing humor must be, besides positive and spontaneous, flexible. Don't be afraid to try anything. You can do almost anything and make it humorous. As an example, one of the things, at this point in the lecture, this is the time for those who do not like to volunteer to make a quick exit. This is the time in the workshop where I need to ask for volunteers because I'm going to show you a sample of the kinds of humor that we can do. Now, do I have some volunteers? Good. Don't everybody just rush. Okay, come on up. Any volunteers? Come on up. While the volunteers are coming forward, I'm going to go get my material. And for those who are listening to this on tape, they will have no idea what's going to happen, what's about to happen, but they will hear the results, and they'll wonder what this group is doing. So, could I get a couple more volunteers? Just 2 more. I have a child's game here. I always revert to my childhood. When you want to be able to find something really interesting to do, go back to your childhood. The child's game is called Funny Bones. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Funny Bones, but Funny Bones really is designed for ages 2 to 6 or something along that line, or 6 to 12. But yes, we go from 6. My Funny Bones game it starts at 6, and there is no end. Okay. Basically what we have here, and we have such fine contestants and volunteers, they're going to compete in teams. So we have the first 2 are partners, second 2 will be partners, and if the third 2 will come over here on this side and be partners, we need a little bit of room in this activity as well. Okay. Fortunately, there are no cameras or video recorders in here, so you will not be blackmailed at a later point. On the Funny Bones card, there are a set of instructions, and the partners are to take the card, place the card between the 2 body parts mentioned on the card, and keep it there for the entire game. Between the partners. Yeah, we'll show you what this is. Like whatever it says. Like the first group, it says head to elbow. So this group will have to figure out, put the card in between the elbow and the head. Excellent, no problem. This one is thumb to nose.
Oh, what?
I have no idea how these are coming out. So. Ear to shoulder on this group. Well, they're off to a good start. Ear to shoulder. So you're being spontaneous. I like that.
More.
Nose to nose. Nose to nose while they're doing. Oh, now we come to a part of the game where we have a funny bone. That means when you get a funny bone, the card can go anywhere you want the card to go. Anywhere, except where you already have one. I did this very same game for a group of psychiatrists. I did this at a psychiatrist convention. I had 400 psychiatrists playing funny bones. Can you imagine what a funny bone card went? Oh, we already have one of these, so you can't do a duplicate. Shoulder to ear. Hand to back. Huh?
What do you do if you drop the card?
Oh, if you drop the card, you can go back and sit down. They didn't realize they dropped the card. But here, I'll give you another chance. Because we're going to give you a third card. Oh, you lucked out. Funny bone. Anywhere. And a funny bone.
Oh, good. Yeah, some of that. Back there.
And this one head to head.
Oh, that's good.
All right. Okay. Obviously, the winner is the one that has the most cards. So we will luck out the end of the funny bone.
This one, belly to belly.
Nose to head.
Belly to belly. Oh, no.
Nose to head.
Not my nose.
And elbow to head. We're going to have about 4 cards. Generally about 5 or 6 to start seeing. Here is head to shoulder. No way. No way. shin to knee. Sit down and make fun of the rest of them. Shin to knee on this
I
one.
don't think so.
Hand to hip. They've got the easy ones over here.
Oh, man.
Okay, if they can do this one, they win. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Now that in itself is just a sample of reverting back to your childhood to depend on activities that you can do. And yes, I have done this very same activity with corporations. I'm getting ready to do a workshop with all the department heads for the city of Norfolk. The city of Norfolk is a city of 300 and some thousand. They have over 100 department heads. And on the, I believe it's the 29th of this month, there will be all of the department heads doing funny bones. I have more than one game, by the way, so this they'll be doing these kinds of activities. One of the reasons we do things along this line in our sessions is to show that you can really do anything, and even though there was some embarrassment here, and by the way, thanks for the volunteers. Next time I ask for volunteers, watch the people really bolt for the door this time. To show that it's okay to be in this situation and that humor can be fun. Even though you were embarrassed, so was everybody else up here. So we really weren't picking on anyone in particular. And it was just one of those activities that we can do for enjoyment. There are a number of these things. I had considered bringing another activity that I had done recently with the Chesapeake Health Department. And in fact, even this morning, I had really debated on whether I was going to do this, and then I decided I wouldn't because of my experience with Chesapeake Health Department. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. They wanted me there to do some of these sessions, a humor session, to get the staff pumped up for the rest of the workday. So I'm sure you've seen this activity where you take an orange and put it under your chin, and you pass it down the line, and whichever team can pass the orange all the way to the end is the winner. Well, as you know, people get in unusual contortions trying to pass this orange down the line. And I had the one line that was over here, and I purposely had it male, female staff member. And this team over here was very competitive. I don't know what department it was, but it was a department, seemed like all the department going against another department. They were extremely competitive. They were probably the accounting department. Procurement, yes. They were really going into this game. And right about the middle, there was a person. She had the orange here, and her partner was a little bit tall. So as she reached up to pass the orange started to slide. Well, rather than grab the orange and start all over again, she went after the orange with her chin and kept going after. The orange slid down here. She went after the orange. The orange slid a little more, and she went after the orange, and it kept sliding. Well, by the time it got fairly close to his belly button, he grabbed the orange, and they started over again. I'm watching this, and at the end of the activity, they continued on, and the game ended, and I really didn't see all what had happened, but there was some chuckling going on as everyone got back to their seats, and the gentleman was sitting right here in about the third row, and I didn't realize that at 9 o'clock in the morning, everyone has fresh makeup on. He had, true story, he had a lipstick stain that started here and went right down on the way towards his belly button. I'm wondering how I'm going to get out of this one. I quickly handed him my business card and said that when you get home this evening, please give her this business card because there's no way that you can explain this without me verifying what had happened. And the best spontaneous line I have ever heard in my entire life came right then and there. The gentleman looked up at me in all seriousness and said, "This shirt is not going home this evening." And I figured that man will be president of the company one day. So that's why I hesitated doing the game today, because that was the last time I had done it. It may even be the last time I will ever do this game. Many people ask how I got started in this profession and working with humor. I will tell you another true story to show you how powerful humor in your work can be, or how powerful humor can be after your work. I was at a different university. I was in Mobile, Alabama, and I was teaching at the University of South Alabama. And one of my former students was a therapist at a psychiatric center. And she had approached me with a problem. She had a 13-year-old young lady who was a client, a patient in the psychiatric center, who was non-communicative, would not talk to any adult, would not even maintain eye contact with any adult. She was in such a state of depression and withdrawn state. It was an extremely withdrawn state. She came to me with this problem, trying to figure out how we can get this child out of this withdrawn state. I read some material that the therapy team, and there was a therapy team working with this child, and since she didn't talk, they asked her to write some things out, which she did. One of the things they asked her to write was describe yourself. I'll tell you the reason she was there. She was a victim of sexual abuse by an adult. And that's why, as you can understand now, why she didn't communicate with any adults. But she communicated in writing, and she was asked to describe herself. They let me read this part of her writing. She said, her own words, that I am ugly, that nobody likes me, I feel so low that my nose touches my toes. That's pretty depressed for a 13-year-old to feel that bad. I sat down with my former student, former graduate student, and we were trying to think of things that we could do to get her out of this depression. Then I realized that my student happened to also be a professional clown. In other words, she was trained, and like the Ringling Brothers training, she was a professional clown, but now was working in a psychiatric setting and not doing any of the clown activities. And I said to her, could we not incorporate some of the clown things that you have done? And she said, as an example. And I said, well, in your clown training, you did certain activities. And all the activities were done in makeup, and you did things like the shadowing activities, where you and a partner pretend that your partner is an image in a mirror, and you pretend like you're combing your hair, and your partner has to try and image and mirror everything that you do. Try some of those things. Try getting getting everyone in clown makeup, and see what happens. The very next week, they took a group of adolescents and developed. Said they were going to do this clown activity. So they got everyone in clown makeup. And interestingly enough, as soon as the clown makeup got on this 13-year-old, guess what happened? She became somebody different. She wasn't her ugly self. Nobody liked herself. She was somebody different because she was disguised. It was just like a mask, just like a Halloween mask. She then started to do some of these activities. She started to smile and started to interact with the people in her group. And I said, my goodness, we're on to something. Let's continue this activity. Next week, let's take this very same group and leave the psychiatric center. Let's go out into the community after we get dressed in makeup. So she went to a secondhand store and bought some large size clothes and things that would look like it would be a typical circus clown clothes, put everybody in makeup, and they marched off, and I handpicked the place where they were going. Took them to a nursing home. And the reaction that I thought was going to happen actually happened. A group of clowns walk into a nursing home. What do you think the reaction was? People were laughing, they were joyous, they were excited, they were just talking, so excited to see this group of young teenage clowns. Well, this is a different reaction that this young lady had gotten. All of a sudden, she walked into a group of adults, and they were glad to see her. We continued this activity for several weeks, and every week she interacted more, she did a lot of activities, she started making people laugh, she started actually talking and working with these adults. Well, during these several weeks, there was something else also happening to her. I had instructed my graduate student to, every week that you go out, pretend that you're running out of makeup, which means that every week she goes out with something less. We don't have any more red, so you can't do your red nose. We don't have any more eyebrow stuff, you can't do the eyebrows. And then all of a sudden, we don't have any more white face. You have to go out without the clown makeup. And during this process, she was transforming from the clown to her real self and never once changed her upbeat attitude, her working with the senior citizens, and the interaction that she had. What had happened was we took a child who was depressed, and through the use of humor and humor techniques, got her completely out of that depression. And in fact, I'd left the university not long after that, and she had written a letter to her minister, and the minister let me read the letter before I left. And it was explaining to her minister that she was so glad that she got involved in these clowning activities. It made her feel good to make people laugh, and she enjoyed all the humorous kinds of things. And published it in a professional journal. Of course, I didn't use names or anything like that. I kept it as anonymous as I did right now. And talked about the whole process that we went through, the step-by-step process. And now I know why no one has ever read my book. This is the only thing that I've ever done. And those numerous articles that you said that I have written, which I have, and the book that I've written, the only thing that people have ever read that I've done was that one article that I wrote in 1979. And since 1979, I've been traveling the country talking about that one topic and the power of humor and the influence and the good things that humor can do. Now, I also work with the medical profession. I've worked with nurses and physicians in talking about humor. Now, this is a tough group to work with because I know for a fact, I'm certainly not going to tell a group of physicians that humor is going to cure an illness. I know that's not true. Plus, I've never heard a doctor ever say, tell 2 jokes and call me in the morning and you'll feel better. It doesn't work that way. Have any of you read anything by Norman Cousins? Read something from about Norman Cousins. Read his autobiography. He will tell you that because of humor, he cured an illness. He said, now, his was a little different in terms of the humor approach. He watched a lot of movies and funny film clips and things like that. And he said that took him out of an unbelievably depressed state because everybody was concentrating, everyone was feeling sorry for him. He didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him. He wanted to enjoy life. So to enjoy life, he went and watched some comedies and went and watched some funny film clips, a lot of old-time movies. And that made him feel better. And when he started to feel better inside, he also started to get better inside. And he actually attributes his recovery to humor and the effects of humor. There are more instances now where physicians are starting to listen to this. As a matter of fact, there are still some groups that I would like to talk to. So if any of you have any influence, I would like to talk to the National State Police Organization. They do not have a sense of humor. So if you have any influence, get me into this group. Or any police department in the country. Whenever you're pulled over for a traffic violation, it doesn't work. Whatever you say, it just doesn't work. So, anyhow, I've continued doing these kinds of humor things and have written several things about it and enjoy doing these kinds of sessions. There are a number of other things that I can do. We've got plenty of time, do we not? Okay. There are a number of other things we can do, so hang on. As an example, there are some things that you can do with your work group. Well, basically, I guess I should find out, how do people in here feel about their work? Good, bad, indifferent? Good? Okay, how about your life after? Oh, there's one thumbs down over there. How about life after work? I know in talking to some of the individuals in getting this presentation ready, that from what I understand, that this group has work as well as work. This is not a group that works and then does nothing else in their entire life. This group has additional duties. Well, you're probably the ones that really need me, because your free time is not free time. Right. I don't know how many days a week or nights a week that you're actively doing your extra work, or maybe this is your first love and what you get paid for. The real pay is just fun. But you've got to try and develop some enjoyment, and not saying that you don't enjoy this other job. You've got to try and develop some enjoyment in life and some free time in life, and don't get on a crash course with the pace that you're taking. If you can inject some of the humor techniques or some of the relaxing techniques into your life, you'll probably you'll last a lot longer. One of the things that I find is that if you analyze yourself and take a look at yourself, look at your work first. And if your work is very tedious type of work, if you're an accountant, let's say, if that's your work, then try to do something in your free time that is completely the opposite of what you do in your work. If your work is one of giving orders, instructions, if you're the boss, then go join a team somewhere where you're not in charge after work. If you're a subordinate or middle management and you always take orders, then go somewhere where you can be in charge. Well, obviously, as a caller, you're in charge. That's good. But as a leader on a club, or organization, a team, etc., if your work is boring, tedious and boring, I would suggest that you do something really outlandish like skydiving or rock climbing, or something that is definitely not boring, something not tedious, and something that is really outlandish. In fact, I had taught a course once at another university. I've been at 3 universities, so taught a course at another university where I had actually gave credit for students who would do something that they had never done in their entire life but always wanted to do. And then they were to write a report on this. And if possible, have some visuals, if they were able to take photographs of their sessions. And it was unbelievable what students would do for an A. I did have people take up skydiving. Well, one of the things that I kind of tricked them. I said, what are the things that you, first day of class, what are some of the things that you have never done but would like to do? And then I had them turn it in to me. And then I said, from this list, you will pursue one of these things during this class, and then, write your report. I had people do skydiving. I had one young lady, and I don't know how she managed to do this, she did aerial photography. She got into the plane while the plane was doing loops and spins and dives, and she was taking pictures of this whole thing while the plane was doing all of these crazy things. I had one young lady who actually entered a stock car race. She wanted to always drive a stock car and never had an opportunity. So she found somebody, some brave soul that gave her a car and let her enter a stock car race. She had a ball doing this. I had people do unusual things. What I found out was that the level of enjoyment that they got out of this is something that was going to stay with them forever. They were excited about what they did. That's the kind of excitement that we all should have after work. Rather than going home and, well, this group doesn't do this, go home and watch television. This group doesn't do this. But you probably work with people that do. Maybe you need to give them some advice. The average number of hours that a person watches television in the United States, anyone have any idea what it is? It's what? 7, 9, 42. Average number of hours a person watches per week and per day is 6 hours. 42 a week, 6 hours a day watching television. Now, I'm not saying there's not anything good on television, but it's not that exciting. There are other things that a person can do. So try to get some people involved in these things. There are some other activities that I have for this group, so I need more volunteers as I'll show you some different activities. With this one, I need a bunch of volunteers. Remember that my humor is not negative, so I don't have any pies to throw in your face. I don't have any rubber chickens to beat you over the head with. I just need a group of volunteers. Okay? Everyone on this aisle, thank you. I can take as many people for this activity as want to volunteer. Okay, we're going off tape again, so that whoever's listening to this next week is really going to wonder what went on. This is it? We'll get them later. The next one I have is even worse. Come on, let's get a circle. Now, let's see if a group of adults can do this. I've tried this with 6-year-olds. It doesn't work. Okay. Now, what we're going to do with this group is I'm going to challenge them on speed, knowledge, dexterity. So we're going to see how quick this group can be. Fortunately, they don't have to run around or do anything. You can do it right in place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk. I'm going to get into, unfortunately, the center of the circle. I'm going to walk. Yeah, I know. I shouldn't turn my back on some of you. So I'm going to point to somebody. And when I do this, please don't take offense at the next thing I say, but I'm going to point to somebody and say elephant. This is not a personal comment. This is part of the game. I'm going to point to them and say elephant. That person that I point to immediately has to make an elephant's trunk. It could be like this, or some way make a trunk in front of you. Okay? So if I were to walk up here and say elephant, good. He has an elephant's trunk. Now, as soon as I point to that person and say elephant, that person, she will make a trunk. The people on either side of her have to make the elephant's ears. And, instead of doing it on yourself, do the ears on her, like this. Good. And make your trunk. See? You got an elephant. Now, the last one to complete their task becomes it and replaces me in the center of the circle. Okay? So if I were to walk around, if I said elephant, you would do your task, and you would be in the center of the circle. Which you are. Just point to anybody and say elephant. Anyway.
Right there. Okay.
Anybody.
Elephant.
Who was last? Here? Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, just take your place. Point to anybody.
Elephant. She meant right
Okay,
over.
good. Yeah, it's really tough to put it here. Okay. That's what she wants. She went up here and it went down. Okay. Anyway. Ooh. Here? Yeah. You're going to try to beat me now again. I know. doing this anywhere. I also do this with the executives and the psychiatrists and everybody else. We're going to do a kangaroo. When I point to somebody, I'm going to say kangaroo, and then what does the kangaroo do? Hop. So that's right. I point to you and say kangaroo, you need to hop in place. Okay? And the people on each side will make a kangaroo pouch. Now, it's going to be very difficult to make a pouch for the hopping kangaroo, so just make the pouch right in front of you, like this. So if I said kangaroo, you would hop. Okay. So if I said kangaroo, you would hop, and we would do the pouch. Okay, we've got it. Everyone ready? Elephant. Any of you see that elephant that's ready to hop? What was even funnier is the elephant had two pouches. Okay, go ahead out and use whatever animal you want, elephant or kangaroo.
Kangaroo.
That kangaroo is getting ready to have a snack. Just pick anybody.
Anybody that can be him. Kangaroo.
This kangaroo has 3 pouches. Okay, anybody can go ahead. Go ahead, why don't you go ahead out and just pick anybody. We'll try it one more time.
Elephant.
Idea what to do. Okay, one more time, and then we'll call it quits.
Okay. Let's see. Elephant. You're going to do the same thing.
Okay, now, use your imagination. Remember, be flexible. Thank you. Thank you. I won't put you through any more. Thank you very much. Use your imagination, be flexible. You can do other animals. You can do ducks, where one person can be the wing and one person can be the tail, and various kinds of animals that you can use. So this is another thing that you can do. There is also a couple of things that I do, and I'm going to give you a sample of this right near the end. And this is something that you can take with you. And I'm going to do something, I'm going to do this on purpose. I have a test. And it's an entrance exam that gets people into Old Dominion University. And I'm going to give half of the room the test, the other half the answers. This half will get the answers, this half will get the test. Now, anyone on this side, if you want to know how, if you scored correctly, you're going to have to get to know the people over here real quick for the answers. So I'll be passing this out, and if I could get some, a little bit of assistance. There's the answers. This is an entrance exam for Old Dominion University, so just one page. Now, I always hesitate to give this out in the middle of a presentation because I know from this point on I have lost the entire group, because you're not going to listen to anything that I've said, particularly those of you who have the questions. You just have forgotten to even pay attention now because you're going to be looking at these questions. If you need to know the answers, you know where to find them, over here. When I do my workshops, I have an entrance exam, a midterm, and a final. And they get increasingly more difficult. So if you are having a difficult time answering these questions, good luck at passing my course, because the midterm and final are increasingly more difficult. Okay. A couple other things for you in terms of life after work and the value of humor in your life. One of the things that I've found is that, and you can answer your questions, you don't have to listen to me now. One of the things that I've found is that humor in your work does diffuse hostility. I believe this, I practice it, and it works. One of my jobs as assistant dean is to handle all complaints. I get student complaints, I get faculty complaints, whatever complaints come in, go to me. One of the things that I try to do is diffuse that complaint as quickly as I can to try and get to a conversation level. Let me give you some examples. I'm sure you've been in situations where somebody somewhere at a tax office has royally messed up your records. Or somewhere in some office, somebody has made a mistake, and you have to take your own time to go take care of this mistake. Whatever it is, it could be taxes, it could be who knows what, some type of bill that was wrong. Well, you have to take off work, you have to drive across town, or whatever it is that you have to do, you're already upset at this fact. And then, probably the first thing out of your mouth is not what you really wanted to say, but it just came out because you were probably upset with having to do this. What I found is that I had this happen once with the city tax office. And I went and I waited in line at the tax office because there was a mistake. And instead of blasting these people and calling them all kinds of names and getting upset and letting them know that I'm taking time out of my work to come down here and do this, I created a scenario where I put the entire blame on me. I knew it wasn't my fault. But I created a story, and fortunately it helps to be a professor because I can always claim to be an absent-minded professor, and I do this frequently. And it works. It works every time. I'll just say, I really am an absent-minded professor, and I've done something here, and I can't believe I just royally screwed this thing up. How can I correct it? And these people look at me, and then they realize, well, it wasn't my mistake, it was their mistake. But because of my attitude going into this scenario, they take care of me. Or when I'm at Old Dominion University working with our registrar's office, anyone who's ever tried to get transcripts from a registrar is impossible. So I work with the registrar's office from day one, 12 years ago. I initiated my conversations with humor. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but it got them laughing, and they took care of my problem. Now when I pick up the phone, I get instant service. When I walk into the office, it happened with the tax office as well as the registrar's office. If I walk in to do some other transaction a year later, they remembered me. Not only did they remember me, but listen to this. They invited me back behind the counter so they can personally take care of me so I wouldn't have to stand in line. So for all of you, those of you who are fussing and fuming, you want to know why you're standing in line? Because you've been fussing and fuming too long. Humor has worked. I get attention, I get it quickly, I get problems resolved quickly, and it's all because I put the blame on me or think of some way to inject humor into a situation. So whatever confrontation that I'm faced with, I try to find some way to diffuse it. Now, I don't belittle or demean the situation. Obviously, there are some situations that I handle that are quite serious. So I know not to pick fun on those situations. But there are some things when a person is really upset, and you know what? If I agree with them that yes, we really did mess up, that diffused them. And then I can have a normal conversation with people. So think about that next time you're having a problem with the tax office. I know, I just paid my income tax. It wasn't very funny, but I've got to try and figure out a way, particularly if I get audited and have to pay more, I've got to figure out a way to try and stay funny with the IRS. I have this year, by the way, I did a session with the U.S. General Accounting Office. That is a group, and there are a lot of accountants and IRS people in the U.S. General Accounting Office. I did a humor session with them. They really did need me. And they were getting prepared for the tax season. And it was a really interesting group. I had walked in, it was a room like this, and I had walked in, and all my stereotypes came true. There were all accountants in the room, and every single one of them had on a white shirt and a red tie. But it was a plain white shirt and a red tie and no sport coat. Every single one. So it was a bunch of clones that I was working with. So use the humor to diffuse that hostility. Use it to be innovative in troublesome sessions. It really does work. Now, before I get to questions and answers, there is one activity that you have to do before you're allowed to leave the room. So anyone who's leaving the room, we're getting ready to lock the door. You cannot leave the room until you get this next test correct. I'm going to stand here, and the only reason I'm standing is so you can see me. You do not have to stand to do this activity. You can do it in your seat. I'm going to draw an imaginary picture in the air, and this picture, I'm going to get you to do exactly as I'm doing, but I'll draw it first so you see what I'm doing. It's the moon is round, has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Now, that's all you have to do. Do it exactly as I did it, and then you've completed the task. Okay, everyone? I need to see the hands. Oh boy, we got work to do in here. The moon is round, has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. We have 1, 2, the gentleman here, you got it right. With black and red, got it right. Second row got it right. Most of the rest of you got it wrong. Let's try it again. Exactly. The light went on, didn't it? I saw the eyes. As soon as they figured out, I saw the eyes. Look at all the people. Look at their eyes are just lighting up. One more time. The moon is round, has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. There really is a trick to this. About half of you got it right now. One more time, and then I'm not going to tell you what the trick is. One. Exactly as I'm doing. We still have a group over here that has no concept of what's going on. The moon is round, has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Somebody please tell this group what I'm doing. Using my left hand, that's the trick. Exactly as I'm doing. Okay, I need some time I'll have some time for questions and answers about some of the things I've done. If you have any questions about a specific incident or situation, how you can inject humor or how you can enjoy life after work, please ask. Oh, this group is a lot easier than my students would be on me. I like this. You want the other part? Here we go. I did this on purpose, and I do this on purpose to get people to interact. I'll give you time. Well, obviously you're not asking questions, so what that means is you want to bolt over there and get the answers. Question in the back. I've heard people tell me that they have no sense of humor. I've never believed anyone when they say they have no sense of humor. There is a way. There's got to be a way that you can get into that person's psyche and work with them. It's a challenge, but there are things that people find funny. If you have any idea what they find funny, then try and capitalize on that. And some of the things that I've done just to get people's reaction, I don't know if any of you have seen, there's a whole list, and I have it back, well, in fact, I've got one right here. There's a whole list of church bulletin bloopers These are things that have been written in church bulletins that didn't really come out the way they wanted them to come out. Such as one said, it was about a person who was ill in the Get Well column, and it said, God is good, Dr. Jameson is better. Well, that's not the way it was supposed to come out. It was supposed to say, God is good, Dr. Jameson is feeling better. But it came out a little differently. And then one about the ladies' auxiliary that are in the basement selling their clothes. Well, they were having a clothes sale, but they really weren't, giving away or selling their clothes at the time. So there's a whole list of church bulletin bloopers. Give this to somebody. Watch their reaction. If they start to laugh, then you've got them. I have another list of accident reports. Things that were said to insurance companies as to why they hit the tree or why they ran over the fire plug or whatever it was that they ran into. I use that. I tell the companies to have a company spokesperson or a company jokester. Have somebody go and put cartoons on bulletin boards or jokes on bulletin boards. Or just do humor, give this person some humorous things. Once you see what they like, then you can start interjecting some of that same type of humor with them. But again, don't beat them over the head with a rubber chicken or a pie in the face. Although that would make you feel a whole lot better. There was a question back here? Yes. The book actually is, and I'm not really going to try and sell it since it's out of print. The book is mostly on Appalachian folk dances, with James Ross, who was at the University of Kentucky while I was there. We did a lot of traveling and a lot of recording of back in the hills of eastern Kentucky, in the Appalachian area of Kentucky, and some of the groups, their customs, their dances, many of the church groups, and some of the dance activities that they did. And that's why we actually call it folk games, even though they're not games. They really are just innovations of some of the popular dances. And many of you who are fans of folk music, a lot of the folk music was actually written by people from Hazard, Kentucky, and Harlan County, Kentucky, etc., like the Richies and the Ritchie family. So it was really easy for us to do that kind of research because we had the actual people right there. Oh, okay. Well, it really truly is out of print. So, and I've been so busy doing other things that I haven't gotten back into that. Question? I'm sorry, they're not. Parker Brothers quit making them in 1972. I found these at a yard sale. What you can do, though, is you can make your own. I did a presentation to the Armed Forces Staff College just last week. And these are generals, commanders, etc., in all the services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And here I am, I'm working with General Sams, who is the commanding officer of this base. And he was out doing these things too, by the way. He asked the very same question: where can he get a copy of these cards? I just simply said, go ahead and make some. I got a letter back from the librarian just yesterday from the staff college indicating that you won't believe that General Sams has taken some of these activities. Here is a general. He's taken some of these activities and incorporated into his staff meetings. I mean, the United States Air Force is now playing funny bones. Either that or I have tremendous influence, one of the two. I can't figure out how that happened. Okay. Oh, what an easy group. I like this. I know what's happening. You're waiting to get over there, so